today's class, we'll discuss the Dutch thesis. Most probably you heard about the Dutch thesis. And first of all, I want to ask you, my voice is acceptable, everything is fine. Please let me know if when I lost my voice, please let me know when you want to ask something, when you want to clarify something. And today, as I said, according to our syllabus, we are going to talk about the Dutch thesis. And the Dutch thesis term was first introduced the Economies magazine in 1977 to analyze the economic situation in the Netherlands. After the discovery of large gas field in 1959. Although the Dutch economy increased its revenues from the export of the natural gas, the significant appreciation of the national currency from the large capital influx into the sector resulted in the high unemployment rate in the country, as well as the decline in the manufacturing industry. This is the main symptoms of the Dutch thesis. Today, we are going to focus on the Dutch thesis symptoms. We are going to focus on the response policy for avoid the Dutch thesis. I will give you some example from the experience of the Dutch, from the experience of the Norway. We are going also to discuss with you the sovereign wealth fund, one of the main tools for the solve the Dutch thesis problem in the research-rich countries. We will focus on the diversification of the economy, also one of the tools for the solve the problem regarding the Dutch thesis in the rich oil, gas, and other minerals countries. Before the presentation, I would like to say that thanks so much for your submission, the essay. I got the essay from the Somaya. Thank you. It's very, very interesting, your point. And I will personally, via the email, contact with you also after the discussion, your essay with the Professor Leila Alieva. And you guys, thanks so much for your submission. The name of the essay, acceptable. Please go ahead and also write up your maximum 3 pages to space, double space, the essay, and please submit as soon as possible. And then I think the mayor and other participants, when we join, we will discuss also the topics and our short essay. And mayor, let me briefly inform you that according to our syllabus, we are going to prepare the short essay, a double space, 3 pages maximum. And please also submit name of your topic. Deadline the next our class. It will be better today, the November 10 and the November 17. Will be better if we receive information from you about the topics as well as 3 pages essay. Please send us the email. Thanks so much. Thanks, Mert. And let me now sharing my screen. First of all, I would like to open the presentation, and then I'm going to also post this presentation in our course.
Sorry, Gubad, the deadline of the whole essays is end of the course, right? Or
Yeah, whole essays, but I am talking only the short essay. Our essay divided into two parts. First, we need to submit short essay, and then we will discuss the long essay. Long essay deadline the end of the course. Yes. Thanks so much for your additional information.
Thank you. And some people, for example, Jokaye has a problem to send a message, so that's why he couldn't send the topic. So I will send you, and I will try to solve the problem as well.
Thank you so much.
Technical issues.
I hope you are now watching to my screen. Today I'm going to talk the politics of the research course and the Dutch thesis. During our presentation, during our lesson, we are going to respond to three main questions. And first of all, we will inform you about the natural research and the broader governance framework. I'm going to talk the challenges and the opportunities. I'm going to describe the negative political tendencies, such as the research course and the Dutch thesis, corruption trends in the extract industry. I'm going also to draw your attention how will the drop in the oil price affect the political situation in the various oil-dependent countries. We will also have time to see what kind of the tools and the policy for the response of the negative effect of the natural research government using by the different countries, and what tools, what policy respond acceptable for our countries. We will have time also to see this situation in the context of your experience, and I mean the experience of the natural research countries. First, it's also answer this question. Do research-rich countries have slower non-oil growth than research-poor countries? And definitely, this question you can say yes, because the oil discovery triggers initial boom. But if we take this period in the long term and the long run, in this case, the slower the whole the GDP growth, including the non-oil growth as well. But it depends on the time frame. If time for short term, you can see some effect. If the time the long term and the mid term, you can see another effect. But in the long-term period, we are observing most of the research in these countries' economy is slower, non-oil growth as well. And the slow non-oil growth related to real exchange rate, related to volatility in income and the spending and the real exchange rate, very fundamental factor, which is the influence the economic growth in the countries, and the research in these countries faces difficult when starting the oil boom and the real exchange rate appreciate, and they started the pressure to the export and the composition of the export, the goods and the service. That's why we will focus on the Dutch thesis today, because this in the literature, this phenomenon, call it the Dutch thesis, and the phenomenon of the Dutch thesis commonly occurs in the countries whose economies really heavily they depend on the research revenues. And however, this process depends on the commodity price, and the commodity price then is dropped. In this case, we are facing more difficult situation when the country strongly depend on the export of the research goods and the commodities. The corruption also one of the main challenges for the research-rich countries. If there is no transparency, accountability, if the country not adopted the anti-corruption recommendation produced by the, for example, the international organization and the Transparency International. In this case, the corruption also one of the main factors negatively affect the growth of the non-oil sector. And here, I would like to share with you some figures coming from the Iran, Venezuela, and the Saudi Arabia, 3 countries, as you see, per capita since 1965, declined. In Iran, -1%, in the Venezuela, -2%, and the Saudi Arabia, -3%. Many other oil-producing countries have serious problems. This problem in the economic literature, we call it the middle income trap. I am going briefly also inform you what is that middle income trap. And research course, you know, the Leila Hanum last time explained what it means the research course and the DAS thesis. Today we mostly focus on the DAS thesis, but I will briefly inform you about the middle income trap. Did you heard about the middle income trap? Somebody can explain what is that middle income trap? Did you observe in your countries, in other countries, the decline of the per capita GDP and the GNP? Yes, so Maya, could you briefly inform us what it means the middle income trap for you, your perspective?
I heard about it, but I cannot explain very well. But I think that all the income countries who cannot improve their GDP, they are actually trapped in the middle income trap.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a good point for the introduction. You can see the 2 group here, oil economies, and another group, the regional group, the EU countries, Asian tigers, and the OECD, European countries, Latin American countries. But Iraq, Venezuela, Nigeria, and Russia, Africa, these countries, those countries, as you know, mostly the oil producing countries, have the serious problem in context of the GDP growth. That's why they lose the GDP per capita. This is one of the main explanation. Another, but during this time, the Iraq, Nigeria, Venezuela, except Russia and Africa, Latin American countries, they also faces difficult in the context of the growth of the population. One side, the population is growth, another side, the GDP decline as a consequence of 2 processes. GDP per capita also starting decline seriously. In the economic literature, we call it this process middle income trap. Middle income trap mostly also in the countries where the high population growth and the less GDP growth, and this is the one of the factors influence the middle income trap. And the middle income trap sometimes also you can see middle income trap when the country faces difficult and the national currency appreciate. Here, the middle income trap, negative shock, and the slowdown in the growth of the research-rich countries, resulting in the downgrades in their relative income status. Why downgrade is the relative income status? Because all countries present the GDP in dollars. This is the main indicator for compare the country by country and the GDP per capita and the GDP also in nominal, in real as well. And when appreciate the national currency, this process is going very well. And when started the depreciation, national currency, GDP in dollars, and very fastly declared GDP in dollars. For example, in Azerbaijan in 2015 was 75 billion US dollars, but in 2018 GDP per dollars was 38 billion dollars. It means that the 2 times GDP in dollars decline, 2 times decline, and in dollars. But in national currency, GDP is going up, but in the dollars, GDP is going down. And if GDP in dollars is going down, in this case, the GDP per capita in dollars also decline relatively. That's why we are call it this process middle income trap. This is the negative shock of the slowdown in growth of the research-rich countries. Let me go back and show you also some other aspect of the natural wealth and the economic growth correlation. The natural research boom makes a country better off at least for a while, but if it reduces growth, then after time the country will be worse off than it would have been without the boom, other things being equal. But this is shows how the relationship correlation between the natural wealth and the economic growth. Unfortunately, research-rich countries they have the indirect link between the natural wealth and the GDP growth, and there is also some relationship between the human development index and the GDP growth. This curve shows the differences between the non-research countries and the research-dependent countries. And you can see this is the red one, research-dependent countries. The human development index, the human development index based on the GDP per capita as well. And human development index in the research-dependent countries, whole period, approximately 3 decades since 1980 until 2010, human development index in the research-dependent countries grows less than non-research-dependent countries, according to the UNDP report, UN Development Program report. It's also one of the additional aspects of the research-rich countries development station. Let me briefly present the challenges. One challenges of most of the research-rich countries. This is the volatility revenues, and another one, the large-scale project, environmental risk, coordination, many different interests of the stakeholders, and the production sharing agreement in secrecy. I'm going to stop one by one all of them. First of all, let me to explain the revenue volatility. And here, budget revenue growth rate in Azerbaijan, in Kazakhstan, in Norway, And as you see, almost the same growth rate. In 2009, during the global financial crisis, budget revenue drop and decline because in that time the price of oil and other minerals in the world market dropped. That's why the decline of the budget revenue in Kazakhstan, in Azerbaijan, in Norway, all of the countries, the same trend. And other period, you can see the budget revenue growth rate in the positive. And here you can see the economic growth indicators in Azerbaijan. And Azerbaijan, the main export of the oils started in 2005. That's why I divided the group of the oil boom period. The 2005, 2008, this is the initial boom period, and then 2009 and 2010, oil revenue, oil production was in peak in Azerbaijan, and then started to slow down. If you draw your attention, you can see real GDP growth during the initial period was very high. The average indicator 24.2%. This is the annually GDP growth in Azerbaijan during the 4 year. And the 2008, the annual GDP growth was 34.5%. Is so high. Azerbaijan in that time was in the second place in the world according to GDP growth. You know, which country was in the first place? In the first place in that time in 2008 was Iraq, and GDP growth Iraq more than in Azerbaijan. In that time, Azerbaijan, the GDP growth annually was 34.5% because the initial the oil boom for the countries. And if you go the another period between 2009 2010, you can see a slowdown of the GDP growth, and then 2011 2016 GDP growth annually drop 1.3%, and then we have also minus recession in my country because in that time started, as I explained, started the middle income trap. Because in 2015 in Azerbaijan was the national currency depreciation. The national currency lose value almost 2 times. It was one of the symptoms of the dust disease. I'm going to explain the symptoms of the dust disease very detailed. Then let's see what happened in the oil GDP. Oil GDP growth was higher than the common GDP growth, and first period, initial period, it was the average 42.9%, and then slow down in oil GDP, we have the minus 4.6%. And as consequences of the slowdown of the GDP, you can see the problem related to the income of the population. Income of population also went down. And you can see also growth rate of the nominal monthly wage also went down, and the growth of the budget expenditure also went down. Here, the station, the oil revenue and the permanent income equivalent Azerbaijan. This one, the line of the permanent income. Most probably you heard about the permanent income approach. Permanent income approach, this is shows that it doesn't make sense how many oil revenue you have during the oil boom period. You are going steadily stable spend, for example, in this line 5 billion every year. But as you see, oil revenue is going up, then it is going then went down, and but the permanent income line continues steadily $5 billion. It means that the government decided to spend whole period average $5 billion in dollars, despite of the how many oil revenue the government received. But this is the theoretically possible, but the countries mostly they violate these rules, and they started to spend more money when receive more revenue, less money when receive less revenue. Here, the government revenues and the expenditure and the oil prices. Let me draw your attention first the oil price. Oil price, this is the green line. Green line shows that oil price in 2009, due to the financial crisis, went down. At the same time, as you see, the government revenue also went down. The government expenditure went down. It means that the government revenue and the government expenditure depend on the oil price. At the same time, the government expenditure depend on the government revenue, because if you have the more revenue, you will spend more money. This is in the literature. This is called the pro-cyclic policy, and but we need the contra-cycle policy. What it means the pro-cyclic policy. In most of the developing countries, monetary and the fiscal policy is pro-cyclical rather than counter-cyclical. They tend to be expansionary in booms and contractionary in recession, thus exacerbating the magnitude of the swing. Often, income inequality and the populist political economy are deep fundamental forces underlying the pro-cyclicity. And if you remember, during my previous time, I shared with you the two examples from the Mongolia. And the Mongolia, when was the president election, before the president election, two candidates, they promised for the citizen when they will be president and will disseminate cash money among the population. One of them promised the $800, another one promised the $1,000. But it was impossible, because if they divided this money among the whole population, in this month they should divide the 70% of the GDP among the population. It was economically impossible. But I want to say that the populist politicals, they want to use these tools for the election campaign. I saw here the Mert Uzun intervention. It is like get stuck in the GDP between the $1,000 and the $12,000. Yes, it's correct. It's correct. Let me back also this question one more time and explain another conception. And here, the expenditure volatility in the Venezuela. As you see, all time, the expenditure line follow the revenue line. But if we also add the line of the price, we can see the same also trend, the price in 2009, 2010, you know, the price of the oil was less than the previous year and the future years. And here, then also received the one more time, they explain the research course. And research course, and sometimes we are talking the paradox of the plenty, refers to the failure of many research-rich countries to benefit fully from their natural research fairs, and for the government in these countries to respond effectively to public welfare needs. While one might expect to see better development outcomes after the countries discover natural resources. Research-rich countries tend to have the higher rates of the conflict and the authoritarianism, and the lower rates of the economic stability and the economic growth compared to their non-research-rich neighbors. And the next time, Professor Leila Alieva will focus on the conflict and also research conflict in the research-rich countries, because there is also a positive link between the paradox of the plenty and the conflict. I am talking about the domestic conflict and the authoritarianism as well. And the next time you will receive more information and the conceptual information between the conflict and the oil and the gas revenue, the research revenue. Here, I want to explain causes and the effect of the research course. One of the causes, there is no democracy. Most of the natural research countries, and democracy is very important for the establishing institution. Previous time, we discussed what is the role of the institution. I know the Somalia also made very good point about the role of the institution in this process, and really the institution very important. But if institution created by the people, by the democratic republic, in this case, institution make sense for the control of the oil revenue, for the using the oil revenue properly, the state purpose. And if this institution establish pseudo institution as a pseudo institution, previous presentation I explained some countries they also established a pseudo institution. For example, they have the parliament, they have also chamber of the account. The parliament should be independent and should base on the free and fair election. But countries, mostly in the authoritarian countries, the executive committee, they appointed the member of the parliament, but they organize the election, but election is not free and fair, and that's why the parliament function, the parliament also role is very, very low for the increasing the accountability, enhancing of the transparency, because the parliament, parliament depend on the executive government, and they dominate the power in the executive government, mostly in the research countries. And the chamber of account, the one of the main institutions should follow the spending of the government, but they should also conduct some research and analyze, also audit, and then discover the corruption basis. But the countries where the corruption is very high, where the country depend on the natural research governance, many countries, the chamber of account also operated nominally. There is no big role for the fighting of the corruption. The countries where the nominal, the chamber of account operated. Conflict. Next time you will have the more information about the conflict, but let me briefly explain that natural research can and they often do provoke and they sustain internal conflict as different groups fight for the control of the resources or use the natural resources to finance their fighting. For example, in Nigeria, the federal government, federal state, and each state, they also try to receive more revenue from the central state. It was some competition between the state. It was also some conflict between the state. It was some conflict between state for the receiving the more revenue from the central state. But it created a conflict between the state. It created sometimes conflict among the group because in this process, a lot of the stakeholders had interest to receive the more money from the central government. For example, in our experience of Azerbaijan, we observed that the ministers they want to receive more money from the central government. For example, the Minister of the Transportation during the budget planning process, they try to have the more budget for the construction of the road, construction of the bridge, and construction of the road infrastructure in general, because the corruption was very high. If they receive the more budget for the construction of the road and the bridge, it means that they will have the more chance to make the more money from the corruption. The same approach also come from the Minister of the Education. Minister of Education also paid mostly for the construction of the schools, and they want to receive the more money from the state budget, and because they want to construct new schools and as well as make the capital from the corruption. And the next one, inefficient spending and the borrowing. Many research these countries, they have the problem with the state debt. They borrow a lot of, for example, Nigeria has very high borrow, and the other countries also. I know the situation in the Turkey right now, it's complicated because the Turkish national currency depreciate, lost value. Why? Because one of the reasons the Turkey has very high level of the state debt. Not only state debt, and the private sector debt also is very high. And the international reserve is very low. In this case, it can't support sustain the policy of the national currency. National currency lost the value every month, every week, every day. Even now, the 1 euro more than 10 lira. It means that really one of the main problem. This is the more borrowing, and if they borrow more, it created the problem for the payment back. What kind of the problem? The problem, if you should pay this on time and pay back your debit on time, but it required more demand for the foreign currency. If you are going to collect more foreign currency for the payment of the debit, it created the problem for the rate of the exchange of your national currency. And the last one, thus this is a large increase in the natural resource revenues can hurt other sector of the economy, particularly export-based manufacturing, by causing inflation or exchange rate appreciation, and the shifting labor and the capital from the non-research sector to the research sector. I'm going to stop all of this, the symptoms, effect of the dust disease, and to explain what it means, the effect of the exchange rate, what it means, the effect of the spending, effect of the movement of the resources. And let me start first explain the whole process. There is the two countries, the non-resources countries, and the resource-rich countries. Non-resources countries, the citizen pay tax. The budget formed on the citizen tax, formed on the corporation tax, and then the government used these funds to the public expenditure, and expenditure also under the control of the citizens, under control of the institutions, and citizens are more likely to scrutinize the spending. They have the non-governmental organization, most probably your country also, a lot of the civil society organization focus on the control of the budget spending, and they also mobilize the people, they inform people, they organize the public hearing on the budget review, on the budget expenditure, and it means that there is the participatory budget. There is the public participation in the budget process. But let me show what the process in the research-rich countries. Research-rich countries extract industry pay tax. The budget mostly depend on the extract industry payment, including the transfer from the oil fund. Then the government used these funds for the public expenditure, the same as in non-research countries, and the expenditure, but there is no citizens' participation as a taxpayers. That's why the citizens are less prone to monitor government spending. This is the main differences between the non-research and the research-rich countries' budget process. And the research-rich countries, they can spend each dollar very effectively and very transparent. In these countries, you can see how many they spend money, who spent money, and how they spend money, because the budget also based on the classification. They classify budget expenditure, the economic context, functional context, administrative context, and the program context as well. But these countries, research countries, the classification of the budget expenditure also very, very low. Could you share some your experience? What is the situation in your country? What is the public participation in your country? Are you observe a lot of civil society are involved in this process, and who want to share the country-specific experience? So Maya, maybe start from your situation in your country in this context.
Definitely, we can see Dutch disease in Iran after starting to extract the oil in Iran. We can see that a lot of resources from other industry like agriculture and other industry shifted to natural resources and oil extractive, and we cannot see growth in our country after the.
What about the participation of the civil society organization and the people interest to receive the information about the expenditure of the budget? The people are interested and how many the government spent money.
People are very interested about how this revenue is spent in our economy, but there is no transparency in budget, and we know in detail how this money is spent and where this money is spent in our country, and because all of the the oil company actually under the supervision of the government, and we have national oil company and all of the company, all of the oil, it's actually in the hands of the government.
I see. And the civil society organization, they operated dependently, or they depend on the some, for example, the government bodies, and the, what kind of the civil society organization you have in your country?
Organization?
And the non-profit organization, I mean, civil society.
They are independent from the government.
Yeah.
But they are not very very active in Iran because they don't have enough freedom.
I see. They don't have the civic space, yeah, a limited civic space.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Sumaya, for your good
welcome.
point. It's very interesting to also listen. You can also add the comment. Many people, including the civil society organizations, are not much pay attention to the government expenditure. Media do little. This is a good point, Jokai. You know, we are from the former Soviet Union. In Soviet time, it was the one of the approach that the budget money, this is the state money. This is not our money. It's not my money. I'm not going to follow how and where the government spend this money, because it's not belong me. It's not belong my family. And it's the same in my country, in Azerbaijan, and the Professor Leila also added her point about this station. And it means that it's the Soviet style approach to the state budget. But the state budget, this is the budget of the people, budget of everyone. And what's the station in Turkey, Matt? Could you share the experience from the Turkey? Matt? Okay, and Matt also add information. Also, the Turkey is research poor country. We are not able to monitor our government spending in some space. I think it is because the democracy index. We have just found out the enormous natural gas field on the Black Sea, approximately 320 billion. It means that in the future it will be more complicated, yes. If non-research country, Turkey, right now have the problem, if they will have the additional revenue from the natural gas, it will complicate the station. But now I know the station in Turkey, I know this is not the good station regarding the civil society organization and the civil toplum, as well as the media. Independent media also suffer from the civic space, the limited civic space. Civic space is very limited, and the political space also very limited. And let me also say what's the comment coming from the Charlie. In Timor-Leste, we have more freedom and the transparency, but most people, including the journalists, have a numeracy problem, and they focus more on personalities and policies. And Charlie, could you explain more detail what it means they focus more on the personalities and policies? Because the Timor-Leste, the station is different than station in the Turkey, Iran, and the Burma, and I mean the Myanmar. And what is What do you want to say that they focus more on personalities than policies? I understand.
Yeah,
Please go ahead.
sure. It's maybe partly because people, at least older people, lived during the Indonesian occupation, where the Indonesian currency, the rupiah, is usually measured in billions and trillions because the actual value of one rupiah is very small. The current exchange rate is about 15,000 rupiah to the US dollar. And so that people don't have a clear idea that $1 billion is a lot more than 1 billion rupiah. And so when there's a large expenditure or a small expenditure, people don't make that much, make a distinction. So, for example, the largest issue, I think, in recent years about public reaction to a government expenditure was the purchase of cars for Parliament, which was about $3 million, between $3 and $4 million, while there's a misguided oil infrastructure project, which is going to cost $20 billion, but people are not very worried about that.
I understand. It's not good. People should care about all of these issues, and but sometimes the country has the freedom and the transparency, but they have the problem less interest from the people side. But in United States, you know, the station, the people very involved on the this process. They follow all of the spending of the government, and even the president cannot make the his own decision without the discussion in the parliament, without the discussion in the media. And it's a very, very big role of the media in the United States. And the last election also shows that media here in the power, media play a very important role in the political life of the United States. I know in the economic life of the United States, and media became more powerful. And I think the digital media maybe became more powerful, and the social network as well. That's why in the future maybe it will be impact in other countries because the United States is safe model for others. That's why the Mert also add to more the comment. Public opinion does not have any impact on the transparency on how our tax spending. And the right-wing populist authoritarian countries do have these kind of issues, I think. Yes, I agree with you and the populist authoritarian, the government. Unfortunately, in power is not only in the Turkey, they are in power in the Hungary, they are in power in the Azerbaijan, Russia as well, but it is make big sense. And the population also, unfortunately, most time they believe that the populist government will solve their problem. Okay, let's go forward. It was very good comments from your side. Thanks so much, all of you. And why does this is? Let me first respond to these questions. One, interpretation, particularly relevant if the complete cycle is not adequate for reason, is that it is all painfully reserved when the world price of the export commodity goes back down. It's created the symptoms of the dust disease. And the second interpretation is that even if the perceived longevity of the increase in the world price turned out to be accurate, that the crowding out of the non-commodity export is undesirable, perhaps because the manufacturing sector has greater externalities for long run their growth. Let me explain this situation detail, and while inflation and exchange rate appreciation can harm large swaths of the economy within few years, their impact can be felt for the decade. The detrimental effect of natural resources on other industries has been well documented in the Iran, Russia, Trinidad and Tobago, and the Venezuela, and other countries, including Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan as well, all of which have a stunted manufacturing sector or so precipitous decline in manufacturing. This impact can be minimized if the country has the absorptive capacity to transform resource revenue inflows into the tangible investment, such as the road and the electricity. The government use the resource revenue to make investments in the economies that generate non-research sector growth. It's called it, the economic diversification. And if the country reach the diversification of the economy, this is one of the main policy award of the Dutch thesis. Over the last 25 years, Chile, Indonesia, Norway, and the United Arab Emirates have largely managed to overcome Dutch thesis. The Dutch thesis refers to some possible unpleasant side effects of the boom in oil or the other mineral and the agricultural commodities. A large real appreciation in the currency, an increase in spending, an increase in the price of the non-trade goods relatively to traded goods, a resultant shift in labor and the land out of the non-export commodity trades goods, and the current account deficit of the balance of the payment. And this process you can explain between the non-trade sector and the trade sector. Somebody can explain what it means the non-trade goods, what it means the trade goods. For example, which sector, including the non-trade sector?
I think the service sector is in the non-trade sector.
Exactly, yeah. And the transportation also non-trade sector. You cannot export your house in Iran to the, for example, Azerbaijan. And the non-trade sector goods only are using for the domestic aims and for your own aims in the country. But the trade goods you can send in the other countries, you can send export. This is the big difference between the non-trade goods and the trade goods. It makes sense when the Dutch thesis, what happened in non-trade goods, what happened in the trade goods. Yeah, the Dutch thesis scheme. Let me first explain how the Dutch thesis observe. First, oil starts flowing, and then inflow the foreign currency. And a lot of foreign currency we receive because we are going to increase the export. If we receive the more foreign currency, what will happen? It will the positive impact of the appreciation of national currency. And for example, in Azerbaijan during the oil boom, when we received the more currency, more foreign currency from the export of the oil and the oil products, our national currency, manat, appreciated. And in that time, the 80 cents equaled $1. And after the drop of the oil price in the world market in 2015, even in the end of 2014, what happened? we receive the less foreign currency. And if we receive the less foreign currency and the current account of the balance payment, we'll have the deficit, because we will have the deficit in the balance of the trade turnover, foreign trade turnover, and started the devaluation. And if started devaluation, in this case, the devaluation of the exchange rate change, and the people became one day very poor, and the government also became one day during the one day very poor. Let's see what is here, and inflow of the foreign currency, value of the domestic currency raises, and the inflation raises, and people and the capital move from the other sector to the oil sector. Other industries grow less competitive and decline. This is the symptoms of the dust disease. Here, 3 symptoms. One symptom, this is the appreciation of the national currency. Another symptom, this one, the movement of the resources. And this symptom, the industrialization symptoms. As you see, 3 symptoms. We have also one more symptom. This is the effect of the spending. Why people and the capital move from the other sector to the oil sector? You know, somebody can explain why. And because the oil sector is going to pay more wage, more the payment for the your work, because they all of the resources collected in the oil sector, the modern technology are moving to the oil sector, and the high level skills are moving to the oil sector, and high level quality of the material are moving to the oil sector. And in this case, we are facing difficult in the sector, non-oil sector, because non-oil sector suffered from the high-level skills labor, suffers from the capital, from the investment, from the modern technology, and they suffer from the also modern and the quality material resources. And this is the one of the symptom. And another symptom here, the symptom of the appreciation of national currency. And in result of the 2 symptoms, we have the consequences, or as a symptoms, deindustrialization. What it means, deindustrialization? It means that the price in the tradable sector increasing less than non-tradable sector. The price in non-tradable sector very fastly going up. The price soars in non-tradable sector. For example, the people they want to invest money to the they want to invest money to the construction. The net also, including the comment, construction sector is not traded. Yes, they want to invest money to the property market, because the property market price compared to the price in the agriculture is going up very fastly. And the people knows, and the investor also knows, that if I invest money to the property market, I will receive more benefit, more profit. If invest money, compare invest money to the agriculture sector. That's why they started the deindustrialization. Deindustrialization, it means that the service sector became more attractive. Let me focus your attention to 2 channels by which the traditional tradable sector may be crowded out by the booming research sector and the non-tradable sector. One of them, the research movement effect. Increased productivity in the research sector pushes wage up, leading labor out of the production of the manufacturing sector. And another effect, I promise you that I'm going to explain the spending effect. Increased income shift demand from the lending tradable sector to the non-tradables. Their wages will also be pushed upward. This spending effect will feature the factors of the production out of the non-research tradable sector. As you see, there is the non-tradable sector became more attractive. Non-tradable sector also, there is the movement of resources from tradable sector to non-tradable sector. There is a movement of resources from the oil sector, from the non-oil sector to the oil sector. And in result of this process, in result of the Dutch thesis, the oil sector attracted very high capital, labor, and other resources. And the same, the non-tradable sector attracted labor, capital, and other sector more than others. And in result of this process, non-tradable sector is going to pay more money for the wage. And that's why the people, the high-level skills, they try to move from the non-tradable sector, from the tradable sector to non-tradable sector, from the non-oil sector to the oil sector. This is also shows that tradable sector in research-rich countries is lower than the norm by approximately 15% of the GDP. This is the empirical studies shows that the research-rich countries, as you see here in this line, and this is the non-research-rich countries between the 1975 and the 2005. You can see here 15% of the GDP. This is the tradable sector in the research-rich countries, almost 15%, and decrease minus here is plus the positive trend. Let me also to draw your attention to another negative effect of the research-rich countries is the corruption and the significant link between the natural research space and the corruption. If you check the last 10, 20, 30 countries in the ranking table of the perceptions of corruption indexes, you can find a lot of research in these countries. Among the corrupt countries, the most of the research in these countries, they have the high level of the corruption. Why? Because corruption, they have the big institution fighting for the corruption, and they have the also big the democracy system, the population participation. They have very strong authoritarian government, and have very less transparency and the accountability, open government as well. Here, I want to also present the natural research decisions, charter decision chain. But it should be the discover and the deciding to extract. Here you can see in the government, the company getting the good deal and starting the managing revenue distributed by the government, between the government and the company. I'm going to explain our next class the different models of the revenue distribution. And then the government started the spending. But here, if we have some international community and the domestic community, they can also increase transparency. For example, the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. This is the global effort for the promote the transparency in the natural research sector. And but they, as I said the previous time, they focus only the revenue side. They have the very narrow mandate, and there is no any initiative coming from the AITI to focus on the expenditure side. And now I want to discuss with you the policy response. And if we're thinking about the natural resources and the growth, but here the natural resource and then X and economic growth, what do you think? What is the X here? Could you share your views? We have the natural resources, and now the Charlie include this comment in Timor-Leste. There is also the political, psychological factor leading to the neglect of the other sector of the economy, agriculture, manufacturing, and the human resources, health, education, nutrition. If you can buy overseas scholarships for a few, there is no need to develop a strong education system. If you can import food for the small, middle, and the upper classes, you don't need to support the domestic food production. If you can play for the well-connected people to go to the sector, doctors in other countries, you don't need the quality healthcare system. This is the legal, but is it corruption? It's very interesting in the Timor-Leste, but in some countries they want to establish their local, for example, the education system. They want to establish their local health system. Why they want to establish the local education system? And the authoritarian government, they are afraid of some youth people studied abroad, change the brain. That's why they try to keep the youth people inside of the countries, because they are afraid of the Western educated the people and Western educated youth. That's why in Azerbaijan, the situation in the context of the education is different, but in the context of the health system, I agree with you, because the poor people they prefer to receive the treatment inside of the country, but the rich people they prefer to go to the Turkey, to the Germany, to United States, and but in quality of the health system in Azerbaijan, in the rich resource countries, I know it is very low. But this is legal, but I don't think so. This is the corruption, because this is the policy. I think this policy maybe policy based on the comparative advantage, and some goods I agree. Some import foods should it depends on what is the comparative advantage if we are going to produce these goods inside of the country? How many we will spend money if we are going to import these goods from abroad, and then we will compare which one is will be less cost. We will focus on this import or the domestic production. And now they propose the transparency and Somalia, the good governance, democracy, and the financial development, trade openness. I think that Charlie also talks on the maybe from the Charlie's the comment is prefer the high education and the high health system. And what about the yokai? What is your response? What is the X here? Good natural research policy and the revenue management. All of your response are right, but I want to focus one of them. And let me explain that there is 5 channels of the transmission. One of them, this is the last disease. They explain the exchange rate, wage, and the volatility problem, rent seeking, protectionism, and here in the Timor-Leste, it's not protectionism, it's liberalism, but in the maybe it's freedom in the Timor-Leste, but the most countries in the resources countries, they prefer to produce the more goods inside, and they promote the infant industry policy. They promote the import substitution industrialization policy, and because there is also the very high corruption, because they allocated the money from the oil fund for the construction, for the also credit for establishment some infrastructure, and they call it the industry plans and the plant, and they call it it in the agro park, and they invest a lot of the government money. And overconfidence, poor quality of the policy and the institution, neglect of the education. This is the observing the Timor-Leste neglect of the education. They are not going to care the own education because they prefer that if you can access the scholarship and receive the good quality education in abroad, why we should develop of the education in country. Too little investment. I'm going to focus on the mostly education, but first of all, we need to transfer all of the oil, gas, minerals revenue to the social capital, to the human capital, to the physical capital. I remember one of you asked me which sector is very good for the invest the oil money and the invest the gas money and the minerals money, and this is the sector of the social capital, sector of the human capital, sector of the physical capital. All of them very good for the development of the human. And let me give you some example. For example, this example coming from the Norway. And Norway, here among the 90 countries, Norway is close to the top of the list of the countries ranked by the public expenditure on education. And this is the very high level of the expenditure of the on the education by the Norway government. Most probably you are familiar of the experience of Nordic countries. Nordic countries are consist of the Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and Finland. Poor countries, they invest more money to the education system, public education system. Without any tuition, every citizen in Norway, in Finland, in Denmark, and in Sweden, they can receive good quality of the education. And Norway experience and the Finland experience is totally different. Why they invest more money to the education? This is the invest money to the human capital, and they explain that the high skills people will give more value for the economies than less skilled people. That's why their policy based on the increased public expenditure on the education. I think this is the right policy. This is the good policy. But here it shows that if education research mostly invest to the education, and then also education has some link between the growth. What it means? It means that the educated people will involve the management of the country and the management of the companies, and then we will have the positive link between the researches and the growth. One of the policy, one of the experience coming from the Norway. Let me draw your attention to another also aspect of the Norway based experience for us, and this is the invest money to the natural capital. Norway here among the 85 countries is high level, and a 10-point increase in the natural capital share goes along with the decrease in the investment by the 2% of the GDP. Because they invest money and then they receive the return from the investment. This is the 1994, and the invest money, social capital, invest money to the human capital, invest money to the natural capital. One of the main tools for the research-rich countries to have a stable growth. And here also the same station investment coming from the research revenue, and then investment became one of the driver of the growth, and it means that the researchers became the driver of the growth from the experience of the Norway. Here, I want to, in the end of our presentation, and now you are very tired because more than 1 hour I give you a lot of the conception, but this is the last two response policy. One of them, the deceleration of the domestic currency appreciation, another one, diversification of the economy. For the above the Dutch thesis, the deceleration of the currency appreciation in an easier and a more viable strategy to prevent the adverse effect of the Dutch thesis. This can sometimes be achieved by smoothing the spending of the revenues earned from the export of natural resources. One of the most common methods for doing this is the creation of the sovereign wealth fund. Many developed and the developing countries, including Australia, Canada, Norway, and Russia, manage large sovereign wealth funds. Sovereign wealth funds aim to stabilize the inflows of the capital into the economy to prevent it from the overheating and the causing significant currency appreciation. Excess revenues can be spent on education or the infrastructure that will be help to diversity of the economy. You can see here the schema scheme of the development for the countries, and the accumulation money for the sovereign wealth fund. Why? Because if we are going to spend all of the money we receive, we earn the export, in this case, and it will be the appreciation of the currency. What's the negative effect of the appreciation of currency? If the currency appreciates, it's created a big problem for the export, because the exporter, they lose from the currency differences. And most probably you heard the exchange rate policy in the China, in the Japan, but the 100 Japan yen compared to the $1 always depreciate. Why? Because the Japanese economy is on the export-oriented and the industrialization policy. And Japan government, they want to respond the interests of the Japanese exporters, Japanese industrialists, because they need the depreciation. If we are going to appreciate the currency, in this case, all of the stakeholders, exporters, industrialists in Japan will be against of the government policy, because this policy suffered, this stakeholders suffer from this policy of the appreciation. I remember in 1998, in that time, the Hashimoto was the prime minister. In that time, it was the appreciation of the Japan yen. He resigned because this the policy was against the corporative interests of the industrialists and the exports. That's why first we need to establish the sovereign wealth fund, accumulate money, sovereign wealth fund, and then transfer money through the budget and they spend money to the human capital, social capital, and the natural capital, physical capital. This is the good revenue collection and the spending policy for the research in these countries. And where how many spend, it depends on the countries, the specific, depend on the country, the economic situation. And the second one, diversification of the economy. And the diversification of economy is a strategy that can almost eliminate the negative impact of the dust disease on the economy. Economic diversification can be achieved by the subsidizing lagging sector of the economy or establishing tariffs to support of the domestic producers. Here you can see the list of the sovereign wealth fund in the world, and in more than 20 governments currently have sovereign wealth fund, and perhaps the 6 others may be about the great same. And the single largest fund, Norway, government's pension fund, control approximately $1 trillion. It was the information for the 2018. But now, due to the pandemic, the Norway pension fund faces difficult for the management of the assets, but the situation is getting stable. And the second largest the fund, this is the China Investment Corporation, but it's not the research fund. The second largest in the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. This is the based on the research revenues. Control approximately and $683 billion. As a group of 20 active sovereign wealth foundations, control approximately $6.3 trillion. And those many predicted that the rapid growth seen in the early 2000s would continue the sharp decline of the energy price after the 2009-8 the sovereign wealth funds hard. To put the size of the sovereign wealth funds in perspective, consider the US gross domestic is more than 17 trillion, and the total market capitalization of the world's 60 largest stock market is about 69 trillion. The sovereign wealth funds are thus large, but as a 10% of the global equities, they are not dominant players in the global finance. But they became more powerful. Let me also share you the end of my presentation 3 different fiscal approach of the research exporting countries. Different approach of the revenue management. And the endowment with the natural resources can often be a reason of the multiple and the complicatedly interwoven economic analyses. The unstable and the cyclical character of the pricing for the most major resources and the disincentive for economic and institutional developments that may come with the high research revenues have caused trouble for many research exporter countries, since research extraction across the world is in many countries fully or partially government controlled. Sound management of the fiscal policy is particularly significant. The major challenges with the research countries have to handle are shielding the public spending from the ebbs and the flows of the research cycle, saving part of the revenue for the future generation, and the ensuring that these windfall revenue are spent to resolve the long-term development issues. However, each country faces a certain trade-off, and the most prioritize some goals over the others based on its vision, the national government, and the macroeconomic position. Here we will have a brief look at the fiscal framework of the 3 different research countries, which is some respect became exemplary. This is Norway, one of the first countries established a large research fund, and after the initial accumulation period, it adhered to the so-called the bird in the hand rule. Here is it allowed to spend only the revenues from the management of the fund assets, while the oil revenue were channeled into the fund. And this is the 4% of the revenue coming from the assets. The Norway government has right to spend annually 4% of the revenue receive the investment, 4% of the investment return, maximum, no more than 4%. This policy allows to accumulate unprecedented wealth in the Norway sovereign funds, which has recently been around $1 trillion, and was often showcased as an exemplary approach to the managing of the oil wealth. However, one must take into account the country's initial condition. Norway did not experience acute infrastructure deficiencies and had already been a middle-income market economy by the time it started to extract oil. And so it was not as strongly dependent on oil incomes as most other exporters are. That's why developing countries had to look for other models. As you see, the Norway, one of the main advantages that they have the middle income market economy, and when they start to extract oil, they had also the democracy institution. By the time it started to extract oil in Norway, it is very, very important. That's why the country is strongly not depend on the oil income. Let me to present the second the example. Chile response is now Chile's response is now considered as one of the best. This measure copper producers aim at protecting itself from cyclicality, sharp swings in the public expenditures that may happen if the country spends most of the peak revenue without considering saving some of them for the period of the low price. To that end, Chile adopted the structural balance rule. It establishes upper limit to the amount of the research revenues that can be spent each year. And the rules is designed in the way that these limits are roughly flat across the year, and not withstanding de facto annual research revenues. Any extra revenue are channeled into the country's reserve fund, which accumulated them for rainy days or to the financial airbag, security airbag. The pension funds that function to fulfill the state pension obligation. This policy helped Chile to stabilize its annual expenditure, avoiding the crowding out effect, disease effect, sustain, in fact, even raise spending in the crisis year, thus helping to overcome them smoothly. At the same time, it doesn't put a goal constantly accumulating large long-term reserves, which currently constitute around the 15% of the Chilean GDP. This is the second example coming from the Chile, as it's based on the structural balance rule. And the rule is very important for the revenue management. I will inform you about the different rules. It's not only rules, the balance rule. There is the rule of the withdrawal. There is the rule of the debit and the investment rule. I will explain our next class. Let me, at the end of our presentation, share with you the last example coming from the Botswana. Botswana, the Africa's diamond rich economy, had chosen yet another approach. It authorized the use of the research revenue solely to finance the investment expenditure, exclusively developing infrastructure, boosting non-research economy, sponsoring healthcare and education, which are among the best in Africa. All the investment opportunities must be reviewed and confirmed by the special independent body, and including into the National Development Plan. It means that they have the open government, they have the transparency and the accountability as well. All of the spending also including the National Development Plan. And this is one of the best examples to invest money to the physical capital. Three examples today I shared with you: Chile, Botswana, Norway. Three different examples, but it's in the end I want to say that it's not easy to have the analyses to give you the single response how we can avoid the dust thesis, how we can manage of the research course, and but it's the main conception that we should invest money to the human and the social and the natural capital. But it's also very important to have a rule for the regulation of the how many we are going to invest money, how many we are going to accumulate money for the next generation, for the future generation. And in my country, we have also sovereign wealth fund. Our country's sovereign wealth fund assets $43 billion, and we receive up to receive as of the January 1, 2020, $184 billion from the export of the oil and the gas, and the $148 billion. And we have now the $43 billion our assets. $43 billion from the $148 saving money, almost 25% saved, and the 75% almost spent. And that's all I want to share with you. Thank you so much for your attention and the patience. Now I want to ask, unfortunately, there is only 2 participants, yes, Somaye and the Yokaye. Somaye, do you have the sovereign wealth fund in your country?
Yes, we have. It was found in 2011, but there is a significant disagreement in the estimation of the savings size in the national fund, and there is no transparency.
There is no accountability there. They're not going to report and they disclose the information, how many they receive and spend. There is the assets. Burma does not have, yes. There is no. Okay. Charlie, what about the Timor-Leste? Is there the sovereign wealth fund in the Timor-Leste? You have the. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Charlie. You have the sovereign wealth fund in the reserve fund, wealth fund in the Timor-Leste.
I'm sorry, I got disconnected for a minute, so I didn't hear what you said over the last few minutes.
Oh, I want to ask, last minute, I shared the experience here from the different countries about how they manage the sovereign wealth fund. And I want to ask you, in the Timor-Leste, are they operated the sovereign wealth fund or not? In Timor-Leste, do you have this? What kind of the fund? Because they have the different fund, the reserve fund, and they have the also fund for the next generation. For example, in the Norway, the fund for the next generation. Some countries have the stabilization fund.
In Timor-Leste, when they set up the fund, which was in 2004, 2005, they had they sort of tried to include all of the different reasons. It was for stabilization, it was for sustainability, it was for keeping large amounts of fluctuations of income separate from the state budget. They didn't have the problems of currency appreciation because Timor-Leste uses the US dollar for its currency. It doesn't have its own currency. So that particular aspect was not relevant. But the idea was that the oil money would not last forever, and so they wanted to have some money saved after that, and they kept talking about for present and future generations. But in reality, the rate of withdrawal of the fund and the depletion of oil reserves means it's only going to last maybe another 10 years. It's not going to last for more than one future generation.
Oh, thank you. And do you have this information, how many they have their assets, how many they disclose information about the revenue and the assets.
Yeah, it's very transparent. The assets at the moment are about $18.4 billion US. They publish quarterly reports and they on paper, and they actually just published one yesterday. And money can only be withdrawn from the fund by act of parliament, so that's all very, very transparent, but it doesn't prevent overspending. Does not prevent overspending.
Oh, does not prevent the overspending. And during the spending process, is there any overestimation of the project or not?
Well, in theory, there's something they call the estimated sustainable income, which is sort of like what you mentioned for Azerbaijan. It's the amount of money they could take out of the fund every year and still be able to do that for the indefinite future. It's supposed to be equal to the estimated rate of return on investments, which they set at 3%, and the expected money from future oil and gas revenues, which at this point is close to zero. And but the reality is that every year they spend much more than the estimated sustainable income. Even though they do a calculation and they have that guideline, it gets overridden every year.
I see. Thank you so much for your valuable comment and the point. And as I know, in Turkey also there is no operated sovereign wealth fund. And the UK also informed us there is no sovereign wealth fund in the Burma. But there is the two questions, one coming from the Somalia. Could you please explain the differences between the corruption and the rent? The corruption in the research in these countries, in the non-transparency and the non-accountability governance system everywhere, and the rent, rent, this is the not corrupt money, this is the legal money. Rent, you can transfer rent from company to the government, from company to the wealth fund, and then you can transfer to the state budget. You can see how they made the rent, how they transfer money. You can follow this money, the rent money. But the corruption money, unfortunately, it's impossible to follow how they make this money and then transfer money, and what's the channels. This is the main difference between the corruption and the rent in the context of the monitor of the money transfer and the money flows. And but there is the positive link between the corruption and the rent. If the rentier state, the corruption is very high because there is as I said, the direct link between them. Rentier state is the corruption is very, very high. If you check the list of the corruption perception index, which is made by the Transparency International organization, the top 10, 20 corruption, most of them the research in these countries. And there is also one of the question coming from the Mert Uzun, what's the differences between the dust disease and the researches? But dust disease, this is the part of the research course, and the dust disease, the component of the research course. Research course, this is the general approach. The corruption also part of the research course, and also, yeah, it's general. But the dust disease, this is a specific problem, including the research course. Also, one of the negative effects of the research course, this is the dust disease. Dust disease observed the countries where the government can't diversify economy, and also regulate the revenues, And in these countries, you can see the symptoms of the dust disease. And the countries also sometimes dust is also the very short-term period, it's not a long-term period. For example, dust disease depend on the directly from the oil price. If oil price drop, you know, the price sometimes started to increase, and in that time, when drop, we cannot talk about the dust disease, because the oil price drop. It means that depreciation of the currency. But during the dust disease, one of the negative shock, one of the negative effect, this is the appreciation of the currency, not depreciation. If the oil price drop, if the depreciation of the national currency, it means that automatically we avoid the dust disease. But in that period, the research course remain in place. Research course is a long period, the effect, negative effect to the economy. And Charlie had one of the also comment, let me read. In Timberlace, we have these symptoms of the research course, acting as if the oil money will last forever, dreaming of more riches from the earth which are received without going hard work. Same in Azerbaijan, robbing today and repay tomorrow. But it was in my country, then they change, and now we are borrowing less. But I agree with you. Most of the countries they never care about who will pay this debit, because they borrow today, they repay 10, 20 years after. Look of the realistic long-term planning. It's very important. In Botswana, I shared with you, they have very, very good long-term planning, investment planning, using money to solve every problem. The same, even the political problem, even the problem with our government has the problem with the Council of Europe. They prefer to solve the money this problem through the lobbying, pay to the lobbying companies, spending without thinking, and the poor spending. The same in Azerbaijan, and over estimation also project, import dependency. Yeah, import is high. Year by year is increasing. But now we have the more export, but the import year by year increasing. Maybe during the pandemic period it will decrease. And the ignoring non-oil development and the revenues benefit from in non-oil development, but how they ignoring the non-oil development and mostly focus on the oil the sector. Yeah, they spend money to the oil sector. I understand. Benefits flow the urban and the political elites. Petroleum captures decision making. Okay, agriculture, tourism, small industries, etc. Don't get fair go. So good comment. You conclude about today's presentation. Thanks so much, Charlie. I check your point in the context of the Azerbaijan. Most of them observe in Azerbaijan. Why? Because a lot of similarity between the research each countries. They use the same, almost the same, the policy of the revenue management and the government management as well. That's why a lot of the similarity. And we have 4 more minutes, and I will be happy if you have any other comments and the questions, intervention, any reflection. What's the situation, Mert, in Turkey? What's the currency rate today? What's your perception for the future? Could you briefly inform us? Only describe the situation. Yeah, yeah. In Azerbaijan, it was in the 2010, the oil revenue was in peak, but 2011, oil production was in the peak. No, 2010 oil production was in the peak. 2011 oil revenue was in the peak in Azerbaijan. Now we are going down. As you know, our Minister of Treasury and the Finance has, yeah, I know, has resigned, and just after the resign, yes, declined to 8 point. It was a positive impact. Usually, resign of the Minister of Finance should have the negative impact, but in your countries, because the relative of the Erdogan, that's why maybe the resignation has a positive impact of the currency. Now the $1 0.5, 8.05, okay, 8.05. It's very interesting. But I know the end of the year it will be difficult for the Turkey. But now also the new finance minister doesn't give reliance on the public USD, the 8.16 at the moment. Okay, I hope it will be stabilized the situation in the Turkey, but end of the year is not good time for the stabilization of the currency. End of the year, this is the time for the payment and the repayment of the state and the private sector obligation and the debit to the foreigners. It means that demand of the foreign the currency will increase, and I think it will be unfortunately worse than now. The situation related to currency rate in the Turkey. God bless Turkey. God bless you. I hope it will be good. God bless all of you guys. Thanks so much for your participation, for your very good comments. And we are here a small team, but really it's very, very interesting to work with you because I receive good feedback. I receive always very good comments. All of you, brilliant. Have a great day ahead this week. See you next week. Please don't forget to submit your the name of your topic of essay as well as the short essay. I will be happy if but the Charlie, your comment is like the short essay. You can send this as an essay. You describe here really very, very valuable about the Timor-Leste experiences and the research course symptoms in the Timor-Leste. This is a good also topic for us for future discussion. Thank you. Bye, guys. Bye. Have a great day. See you in a week. Bye.